Welcome back for another edition of Ask Father Silva, and today's question is, how often should we go to church? And the simple answer is every single Sunday. Right? The reality is that one of our 10 commandments, number 3, is to keep holy the Sabbath. And to do that, simply put, means to go to church. Now we could talk about the other desires of God in that commandment, like not doing servile labor, right? To make it a day of genuine rest and to honor the Lord by having particular devotions and particular practices, right? So I know for my family, typically we would have a large dinner, right? Or my parents would grab a dozen bagels from Bruegger's on the way home from church. But right, to strictly adhere to that third commandment means to go to Mass every Sunday. And so at least once a week. Now there's also holy days of obligation throughout the year, right? There's some difficulty sometimes in figuring out when that is, because if it falls on a Monday or on a Saturday, then typically it's omitted unless it's one of the particular holy days of obligation like Christmas or the Immaculate Conception. So I would highly recommend for all you Catholics out there at the beginning of the year to look up when the holy days of obligation that need to be adhered to, right? We need to go to Mass on those days at the beginning of the year, to mark them in your calendars and to have them so that we can't say, oh, well, I forgot or what have you, right? That's one of the very minor ways in which we could adhere to that law. But people will ask, how come we have to go once a week? The short answer is, don't you think God deserves at least an hour out of our week, right? To calculate all that time and to say, right, Lord, I know it's difficult for families to get there. You have obligations and soccer practice and a million other things going on, and especially on the weekends when you have tasks at home to do. Sure, right, I agree. But to go at least once a week is the bare minimum, given the fact that our Lord has died for us on the cross and opened up the gates of eternal salvation for us, making it possible to even go to heaven. Right, that's the bare minimum. And so the short answer is once a week on Sundays. Right, you can go to the Saturday anticipatory Mass, right, 4 o'clock here at St. Rose, or one of the 4 Masses that we have on Sunday, 7:30, 9:30, 11:30, and 5 p.m., right, all of which fulfill that Sunday obligation. And to miss Mass on Sundays or on other holy days of obligation is in fact mortal sin, right? And so we need to confess those things and refrain from receiving the Eucharist if we miss Mass on a Sunday or on a holy day of obligation. And so refraining from receiving the Eucharist until we get back to confession, right? Sometimes this may feel like an unnecessary burden of the Church or just one of those strict rules that we have. But again, when we look at things in the context of love, it's very difficult to say I love someone with my whole heart, all my mind, all my strength, and that yet we won't give them at least an hour out of our week, right? If we don't say I love you to someone, we don't show them, right? We don't show up for them. Right? Do we really love them? And I'm not the person who has to judge you, right? But reality is, right, when we stand before God, He's going to ask, like, do you really love me? And did you show me that you loved me, right? Did you tell me that you loved me? Did you show up for me? And so, again, this isn't an external requirement of the Church, but rather one that God has given to us. And honestly, it's one that we're made for. We're made for worship. And when we cease to offer up this worthy sacrifice of the Mass, we start to require sacrifice of ourselves. And so, right, when we go to Mass, it in fact keeps away the enemy in a very unique and beautiful way. And so I encourage all of you out there, right, to do the best you possibly can in order to ensure that those times during your Sundays, right, are marked off for this particular prayer. And the reason why we have so many Masses is because we understand the reality of the busyness of people's lives, and right, scheduling it so that we can in fact make it to Mass is not just necessary because it's a requirement, in canon law and our catechism and the 10 Commandments, but because it in fact is the deepest desire of our hearts to be united with our Lord in the most beautiful, most powerful, most efficacious prayer that we can. That's the holy sacrifice of the Mass. So With that, I hope to see you all on Sunday. But until then, have a great week, and we'll see you again at the very least this Sunday. But if not, we'll see you next week for the next Ask Father Silva. God bless, have a good week, and take care.